I've been a wedding photographer for nearly 10 years, and I thought I'd seen it all. Trashy, beautiful, tragic, hilarious, or just bizarre. I have stories. I've had the typical groom getting caught with a maid of honor, family getting to brawls, brides ODing in the bathroom, gay couples having no one to attend their weddings, or worse, the one uninvited homophobic relative crashing just to be a dick. But we aren't here for the typical stories. If we were, we'd be here all day. We're here for the wedding from last October. Fall weddings are probably my favorite. If I ever get married, I'll probably get hitched in the fall. It was the parents of the brides that came to me, asking for my services for a wedding in 2 weeks. Their original photographer apparently up and quit on them, and they were desperate to have their darling daughter's wedding immortalized in picture format. Luckily for them, I had a clear schedule. I did charge them extra for the suddenness of it all, but judging from the father's Rolex, it wasn't that big of a deal. One thing I'm good at is guessing family's wealth status, and once again, I was on point. The Seawrights were rolling in dough. Not that I really like them though. I'm not required to like all my clients, although it does make for things to be a little more relaxing. Harold Seawright absolutely leered at my chest whenever he thought I wasn't looking, and Carol was clearly a trophy wife that was over the hill, that generally looked more like plastic than her. Nothing wrong with getting plastic surgery or Botox, but there's gotta be a cutoff at some point. I think I should have been more off-put by the parents coming to me rather than the bride, but I just figured said bride was too busy with other wedding planning shit and didn't think too hard on it. Day came and oh boy, I realized I was getting into something I didn't want to be a part of right away. First time I saw the bride, Tanya, I had a brief moment of, I don't know how old this girl is. She could have been 16, she could have been just 18, definitely not over 20 though. I see young marriages when it's a shotgun affair, but then I met the groom, Marcel Wingate, who was definitely no younger than 30, and Marcel was just, something felt off. The man was a giant for one. He towered over me, let alone Tanya. With his long, pale face and sunken eyes, he could have been fucking Lurch from the Addams Family. When he shook my hand and introduced himself, I barely repressed a shiver, but years of practice helped me to smile and act like there wasn't something slimy about all of this. Tanya never said a word when she was made over for her big day. Only Carol did, chirping and twittering about, how about you make her hair a little bigger? Or, make her eyes pop, she has such pretty eyelashes. Luckily, Carol had to go have a smoke every 15 minutes, so the makeup and hair people could have a few moments of actual work. By the time it was all over, Tanya looked perfect. Her dress was basically a white ball gown. A tiara was placed on her strawberry blonde hair, cheeks blushing in a perfect pink. But unlike most brides, she still hadn't said a word, and those sure as hell weren't tears of joy that she was holding back. I'm sure you heard about the first look photo fad. I find it great to get a perfect expression that the groom makes when he sees the bride in a dress for the first time. It's usually quite cute. This was the first time I ever shot a photo where I truly believe it was the first time the bride and groom have actually looked at each other. Marcel did seem to have his breath taken away by the lovely bride, but her expression was less than thrilled as he took her hand and gave it a tight squeeze. My stomach turned when he leaned over for a kiss on the cheek, and she quite obviously flinched. It's time I put a pin in the myth that arranged marriages only happen in foreign countries, and only people from certain cultures take part in it. They happen all the time in the US, and more often than not, it's an old man who wants a virgin bride, and by virgin, I mean still in fucking high school. This wouldn't be the first one I was hired to photograph. I managed to catch Tanya alone in the room she got ready in, sitting next to an unopened window, twirling an unlit cigarette between her fingers. Need a light? I offered as I came in. No thanks, I don't smoke, but they say it makes you feel better, right? Looking up at me with those doll-like blue eyes. It also gives you lung and throat cancer. I took the cigarette from her and lit it up myself. But I'm a bad example, so do as I say, not as I do. Now that got a smile out of her, even if it only lasted a second. How often do you smoke? She asked. Depends on the day. Usually I have 2 or 3. Bad day, I can have a few more. I lowered the cigarette and looked down at her. How old are you, Tanya? 19, 20 in a few weeks. I have a bit of a baby face. She poked one of her cheeks. Why do you care? I glanced at the door to make sure Carol wasn't going to barge in. Tanya, are you not okay with this? The wedding? I asked quietly. Tanya's eyes widened. Damn, you're good. She also glanced at the door. Harold, my stepdad, arranged all of this. If he had it his way, it would have happened when I was 15, but Marcel kept delaying. Business, apparently. He tried to delay another year, but my dad implied that he had other offers. She shivered and wrapped her arms around herself. If I say no, Harold will kick me out and cut me off, freeze my bank accounts. I have nothing and no one, and I don't know what I would do if that happened. I reached into my purse and pulled out one of my business cards. Flip over the card. It's a number for a women's shelter. They specialize in helping women escape from dangerous home situations. They hide them and help them get started in a new city, if need be. Below is my personal home number, if you just need to talk, okay? Tanya took the card and clung onto it tightly, and tucked it into her bra. You might be the nicest person I've ever met, she murmured. I gave her shoulder a squeeze. I try, before extinguishing the cigarette on the windowsill. If you ever need to escape anytime tonight, just ask me to help you go to the bathroom. We could pull a whole runaway bride, I joked. That got another laugh out of her, just in time for her mom to pop into the room. Well, what's taking you so long? Hurry up, the wedding's gonna start in 15 minutes. I don't want you to cry and make your face all blotchy and ugly, she whined. Tanya's brief joy faded and she gave me one more sad look before following her mom out. The ceremony would have been so much more beautiful if I didn't know the dirty little secret behind it all. Tanya didn't smile. I don't even think one of those bridesmaids was actually a friend of hers, or at least, not a sincere one. When the priest said, "You may kiss your bride," Tanya let a tear slip down her cheek when Marcel leaned down to kiss her. I was seriously considering calling the cops, but what could they do? Tanya would likely cave and say nothing was wrong, and since she wasn't a minor, they couldn't label Marcel as a pedo and her stepfather as a child seller. It still didn't make the situation any less shady. All I could do was snap pictures of the worst day of Tanya's life. At the reception, I was constantly being nagged by Carol about what pictures to take, to the point where I wanted to rip her hair out. But I did notice something different about the first dance between the couple. Tanya at first was stiff as a board, reluctant to even touch Marcel, but he leaned down and whispered something into her ear. Her entire demeanor changed in the blink of an eye to one of surprise, and I managed to read her lips. Really? Marcel nodded, and I managed to catch a picture of the first smile Tanya had since she said I do. By the end of the dance, she was actually starting to get into it, resting her head on his chest and swaying to 1,000 years. It was a complete 180 change. Tanya was now one of the happiest and, dare I say, flirtiest brides I've ever seen. She leaned up to kiss him on the cheek as they sat down, something that even took Marcel by surprise, judging by how he blushed. I generally started to wonder if Marcel slipped something in her drink to get her acting so happy, when Carol started nagging me again about where her husband was. She was the kind of mother who forgot that this was her child's wedding instead of her own, and she wanted pictures of her and Harold. In order to get the fuck away from her, I told her I'll go find him. He had been hitting up the open bar a little hard that night. I assumed that he was in the bathroom either throwing up or cheating on his wife. It could have gone either way at this point. When I approached the men's room, I heard something that sounded like gargling or swallowing. Ew, I know. But I kinda hoped it would ruin this nasty bitch's day if her husband was really cheating, so I opened the bathroom door with my camera at the ready. I made contact with Harold, or rather, I made contact with Harold's head. It was sitting in the sink, expression twisted in abject horror. The room was soaked in blood, body parts strewn all around the floor. Meanwhile, Marcel had stripped out of his tuxedo and was currently swallowing Harold's arm, whole. Now, I was wondering if I had something slipped in my champagne. Humans can't unhinge their jaw like that, each gulp taking Harold's arm deeper down his throat. I saw the tips of Harold's fingers disappearing like a small wave of goodbye, and then I dropped my camera. Yes, I heard something break. No, I didn't care. I just saw the groom eat the goddamn father of the bride. Marcel's head shot up, and his eyes, before now they were dull, watery gray, but now they were molted brown and red with slitted pupils. I felt frozen when those eyes looked at me. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. One moment. Marcel turned to the sink that was free of the man's head and vomited. I heard several things clatter on the porcelain before he fetched them out and washed them off. With an embarrassing clearing of his throat, he walked up to me and pulled me into the bathroom. I thought I was dead, but instead Marcel placed several diamonds in my palm. For the camera. I didn't mean to startle you. I managed to get out as I stared at the handful of diamonds. This would pay for more than the camera. Why did you? Devour Harold? Oh, I've wanted to do that for years. Marcel chuckled as he grabbed some paper towels to wipe off his chin. Like that would take away from the fact that he still had a naked body in front of me. A terrible person actually tastes quite divine. You would taste absolutely terrible. It would be like swallowing nails. Meanwhile, a man who offers his own daughter as a sacrificial lamb to someone he knows eats humans, he tastes like the richest cut of steak, cooked medium rare and seasoned to perfection. Jesus Christ, this twisted situation had taken a whole new level of fucked up. Wait, he is seriously? Oh, absolutely. Marcel snorted, and he'd do it again. All for what happens when my stomach possesses human bone. I clutched the diamonds. You're not gonna hurt Tanya? I asked. Marcel shook his head vigorously. God no. I kept delaying the wedding in hopes that she would manage to find a way out, but I think Harold was getting bored of my cold feet. There would be plenty of others willing to pay for her, even if my payment would be easily twice what others would offer. God, I started to feel a little dizzy. Here I was, talking to a human-eating groom. I glanced out the door, and a horrible idea entered my brain, one that would surely earn Marcel's good favor and help out Tanya. So if I told Carol she could find her husband in the men's room. Marcel seemed puzzled for a second, but caught on quickly, with a nod. He picked up the head and tossed it into one of the stalls. I heard a splash in one of the toilets and almost started giggling. I was nearing hysteria. Go right ahead, I'll be waiting, he said as he kicked some more limbs out of sight. I almost left when I had to ask one more question. What the hell are you? Marcel cocked his head to the side before he changed, just for a second. One moment he was a blood-soaked man, absolutely horrifying but normal. The next he was a snake, sort of. His body was gone, replaced by the body of an anaconda, but his head was still the same, minus the flick of a slim, forked tongue in his mouth. Then he was back to normal. He responded with a shrug. Funny enough, I was hoping you'd tell me. I don't have a clue. I left the bathroom and bumped into Carol almost immediately in the hallway. Well, where is he? I pointed my thumb towards the bathroom. Think he's not feeling so well, I said before I was nearly bowled over by the grumpy bitch. I watched long enough for her to open the door and for the scaled tail to shoot out, snag her around the arm and drag her into the bathroom before I headed back to the wedding. The problem seemed to solve itself. Marcel came back, the men's room locked after apparently someone got quite sick in there. Tanya no longer had to behave a certain way to please her mom, and I think she had a good night. I used my backup camera to make sure I got all the pictures of her smiling. Carol and Harold vanished into thin air, never to be seen or heard from again, and the diamonds paid for quite a nice new camera. Like I said, it's been a year, and I sure as hell haven't forgotten about the wedding. But what prompted me to share it was that I got a friend request from Tanya on Facebook. I normally don't accept friend requests from previous clients, but this one time I chose to make an exception. She does look so much better. She's going to college. She now sculpts and paints. She regularly volunteers at the women's shelter I directed her to when we first met. And every Friday night is a group date night at the local arcade with some of Marcel's friends that now appear to be her friends as well. Apparently, Marcel is quite a Dance Revolution master, but is terrible at shooting games. Her most recent photo was her and Marcel smiling, and she was holding up an ultrasound picture.